Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how to use a station queue, primarily for the purpose of searching and finding entities based on some kind of a condition. Let me demonstrate how this process can be useful. Okay. So how can we store and retrieve an entity based on some condition? I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say you are uh, modeling a airport operations. So flight passenger checks in his or her bags, and then once the flight is over, wants to retrieve his or her bags. Okay. So how can we simulate such a process? We have to separate out the bags from the passenger and keep it somewhere. And then once the passenger comes back or comes off the plane, they have to retrieve that bag somehow. So yeah, this is a hypothetical simple process. I'm not trying to represent the exact operations of an airport, but let's just do just a hypothetical so that we can use a station queue to demonstrate how useful this could be for your own application. So for this process, one way you can, a very useful object in Simio is a station object. You can use this to store entities and then use a condition to find the entities that you want and then retrieve it when you need it. Okay, so we're going to be using the station object here. Let me give you an overview of what I'm going to show you today. Some of this is already pre-built, and then I'm going to add in some of the finer details and do it with showing this how to add those details. So basically, a passenger arrives. We're going to assign some random number of bags. So this will be a separate model entity that generates these bags separately for the passenger. These bags are going to be checked in, as in they're going to be stored away in a storage queue. And then the passenger boards a flight. And then once they get off the flight, we're going to do the searching process in the station queue and then retrieve their own bags. So there's going to be some kind of identification to match their bags to the actual owner, and then retrieve those bags and then leave the system. So again, this is not supposed to, represent some kind of real world system. I mean, you can kind of see you can use a similar process to actually do this. Let's say you're trying to simulate a specific airport near your hometown. But again, the purpose here is to demonstrate how to do the search and remove the entities that you need using a station queue. Okay, so let's go to Simio and I'll kind of walk through this with you. So this is the basic template that I'm going to use here. You can download this from the website as well. I have two different model entities, one representing the airplane passenger and then another representing a bag. Okay, so a passenger arrives here through the logic in the source. I'm going to use the inter-arrival time, a fixed interval for 15 minutes. Again, I'm not trying to represent the actual inter-arrival at the airport. I just need passengers to arrive so I can test out my logic here. So a passenger is going to arrive, and then what I want to do here is make sure I have certain random number of bags, and then they'll drop off the bag here, and then the passenger will then go on their flight, and then we'll just assume they get off the flight, and then they're going to pick up the bags they dropped off over here. Okay, and then you got to make sure they pick up their own bags, and then they'll leave and go to the sink. Okay, so that's how we want to model here today. So right now it's all it's already set up so the inter-arrival time is 15 minutes. Right now there's no each passenger is the monitored passenger. There's no associated bags, right? So the first thing I want to do is right when after this entity has been created, I'm going to create a logic to create the number of bags. Okay, so I can do it in multiple places, but I need to do it before this bag drop-off server. So you can do it in multiple places, but I'll do it. I'm gonna just do it over here at the output node. Okay, so I'm gonna create an add-on process and double click on enter. So I create an add-on process right when the passenger mod entity enters that output node, that's source one. Okay, and then here I'm gonna create the bag mod entities, and then I put some kind of identifier so that we can match those two things together. So we're gonna first go to the model entity, and then I'm gonna create a identification variable. So I'm gonna go to states, and then go to integer, and I call this ID. Nope, you can't use ID, I'm sorry. Let's do bag ID, okay? So every model entity that's created in this model has a variable called bag ID associated with it. If you're not sure about how to use these state variables at the model entity versus the model level, check out my other video explaining the difference. So the bag ID will be just kind of I'm going to use this variable to keep track of the ID at the bag level, or I'm going to assign an ID value, an integer value for each bag, and also the passenger, so that later on, I could just match those two values together to make sure that the passenger's picking up their own bags, not somebody else's. Okay. Another thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need some way to auto increment this bag ID. So for example, the first passenger arrives in our system, I want to have a value of 1 and the next passenger value of 2, etc. So I could do that by, I'm going to have to do that at the model level. So before I do this, let's go to definitions. I'm going to go on states, and then I'm going to create an integer here as well, a state variable. I'm going to call this I'll call this passenger. Okay, and this is just going to go from it's just going to be an auto indexing integer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Okay, so it's going to start at 0. Okay, so back in the auto processes, right when the passenger gets created and enters this node, I want to make sure that identification value is increments by 1. Okay, so the first step for me is I'm going to assign, and then the state variable, I think we call it passenger index. Okay, so let's do passenger index. Select it off the dropdown, and I'm going to increment by 1. Passenger index. Okay, so this is, I'll rename this. So this is increment ID value. So every single person that comes in, that walks into our system, they have a unique ID value. Okay, that's the first identification I do. The next thing I'll do, I can actually do it in the same step, or just separate it out. I want to give this index value, passenger index value, and assign it to our passenger. Okay, so I'm going to do a state. Let me rename it. So assign passenger ID to, assign ID value to passenger. Okay, right. So state variable that I'm going to change is model entity dot bag ID. Okay, because we're going to use bag ID. Now, let me rename this. Don't call it passenger. It's bag ID. So the passenger will also have a bag ID variable, same, that's common for all model entities. So let's see. Let me cut away this part here so it's not so long. All right, see here. The new value here now will be the passenger index value. Okay, so let me pause it there. We increment this passenger index value by 1. So let's say the first passenger arrives, the value goes from 0 to 0 plus 1, so now it's 1. We're going to assign that 1 value to model entity.bag ID. So the passenger now has a bag ID value equal to 1. And this is going to be unique because the next passenger will have the value of 2, and then the passenger after will have a value of 3 and on, right? So we know this value is unique. Okay, we're going to use this value as a way of matching up the bags to the passenger. Okay, so right now we've assigned an ID to a bag ID to each passenger. The next thing we're going to have to do is create, a certain number of bags associated with each passenger. Okay, so this first passenger might have 1, 2, or 3, who knows, right? We're gonna have to set up the logic to figure out, assign a certain number of bags to that passenger. So let's assign a random number of bags to each passenger. Okay, so I'm going to need another variable. I'm going to go to model entity, go to definitions. I'll create another integer. I'll call this num bags. So this is going to keep track of the number of bags that each passenger checks in. Okay, so this is again at the model entity level. At the model now, I'm going to do another assign step. Okay, and then I'll rename this as number of bags. So the state variable name here, okay, the state variable there will be model entity dot num bags, and then the new value I'll do a random dot discrete. Okay, and then let's just assume everyone has either 1, 2, or 3 bags. Okay, remember the way this works is a cumulative probability. So the 1, the value, let's say 0.5, and then 2, comma 0.3, and then the rest 20%, let's say have 3 bags. Oh, sorry, I already made a mistake, right? Cumulative, right? So this is 0.8, 0.5, 0.3. The last value is 1. Okay. So what does this tell me? Tell us there's a 50% chance that they'll have 1 bag they're assigned, they're checking in, 30% chance that they'll have 2 bags, and the remaining 20% they have 3 bags. Okay, this is cumulative, right? Okay, so we assigned a certain number of bags. Okay, the next thing we do is we got to create those bag entities, right? So I'm gonna do a create here. Okay, and I'm gonna do a rename, do create bag entities. Okay, so I'm gonna do a create and create a new object. Okay, and then the entity type I'm gonna create is the bags. Okay, and the number to create is going to be auto entity dot num bags, right? Which I just assigned over here. Okay, so this may be 1, it could be 2 or 3. Okay, whatever that is, it's going to create those exact number of bags that I want. Okay, once they've been created, I'm going to take the create entities and transfer them out and put in a station. And then the original is just the passenger model entity, right? Just go straight through, right? Okay, so before I can do the transfer, now I'm going to have to go back to the facility. Okay, and I'm going to now we're going to finally create the station object. Okay, so I'm going to go to definitions, go to elements, and upper left hand corner there's a station here. I'm going to click on station. Okay, I'll just rename this as a bag storage. Okay, and initial capacity is infinity, so I can actually set a capacity to this. I'll just leave it as infinity. Okay, and go back to facility view. So the station exists, but it's not, there's no, physical representation, right? So we're gonna have to give it a physical representation. Okay. So go back to facility. I'm gonna go to animation, and then click on detach cube. And I'm just gonna draw, just draw it out. Okay. You can also change this later. Okay. You right click to finish. Okay. And then the queue state here, I'm gonna call this bag storage dot contents. So this detached queue is going to represent the contents inside the bag storage station. Okay, so this is where all of my bags are going to be stored. While when the bag is dropped off, it'll get transferred in here. Okay. You know what? Right here, yeah, I actually don't even need this bag drop off server. Okay. You know what? Let's do it this way. I'm gonna put a transfer node over here, just to kind of mimic this. Okay, this will make it look cool. Okay. I'm actually gonna make this go. Let's get rid of that path there. I'm gonna make the path go this way, and you really don't need this. Oh, you know what? Control Z. Sorry, you don't have to do that at all. Let's do it this way. So this is just a dummy server here. So, so I'm gonna make this station. Okay, I'll put the station over here. Okay. You don't even need this either. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that. So you don't even need transfer node. So my apologies. Let's just leave it. You could build those things, but I think it's unnecessary. Once it'll just appear over here. Okay, so I wanted to kind of, you can put in a transform, make it transform also, but I think that's unnecessary. Let's just leave it at the source. Let's just work on this. Okay, so once it's entered, okay, so it's created. Let's transfer those mono entities, those bag entities, into the storage pool. Okay, so I'm going to do a transfer now. Okay, put that transfer there, and then I'm going to transfer the current node I might have to play around. Should be current node. You might have to test it out, make sure this works. And transfer this to a station. And then the station name here is bag storage. Okay. So you're telling all the create entities transfer to bag storage. Okay. Now there's another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a process, and then I'm going to do a triggering event, and then that's bag station, bag storage. I'm sorry, bag storage enter. Once it enters, I have to do an end transfer there. Okay. Let's make sure this works. Okay, if there's an error, then I know there's a problem with the starting point when you're doing the transfer. So let's give that a try. There it is right there. Okay, it's a free space because technically it has an enter. That's what I suspected. So to transfer here, you want to transfer from free space from the current when it gets created. So technically it just got created. It's not actually in that station, right? Now you're transferring it into bag storage. Okay, so let's give that a try now. So the first passenger. Okay. All right. So I gotta do one other thing. So we see there's a bag and there's a passenger there, right? Okay. So I could probably even make it faster now. I don't need 20 minutes for this to just be 1 minute. They've already dropped it off. There's one thing I actually have to do here, right? Create here. You don't actually want to do a new object here. You want to do copy associated object. Okay. The reason why you want to do that is if you do this, okay. Remember when we set up an ID value to bag ID, when you make a copy of it, it'll retain that same ID value. So later on, you can just keep track of that ID value. Okay. Let's make sure that's actually happening. Okay. So I'm gonna put let's run this, and I'm gonna pause it really quick here, and I'm gonna right click on this anywhere and do a watch. Okay. Let's get bag 20 bag. Let's get the bag here. Scroll this up a little bit. Okay. If you scroll down and look at bag ID, there's ID of 1, right? Okay. Number of bags 1. And I can also click on this guy right here, or go up here, go to model. There's a passenger. Okay. Oops, not that one. I actually need that passenger model entity. So let's right click on this and then go watch. Minimize those right there. So passenger.23, if you look at it, open it up, bag ID 1. Okay, let's keep running it and see what happens here. So let me speed this up a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna have to go a little faster here. Okay, let's pause it right there. All right, so now I have another passenger there, right? You see there's 2 more bags. Okay, so let's I'm gonna look at this one. Let's watch that one, and then let's watch the rest here. I believe it's 26 and 27. Okay, so passenger 25. Let's look at the ID. It's 2. Number of bags 2. Bag 26. 22. 22. Right. So you can tell they've inherited that in it. When we created those bag model entities, it also copied over that bag ID value, which is what you want. Okay, and also conveniently also has a number of bags too. Okay, so at the this is helpful now, right? Because we can use this later on to match the passenger with their own bags, right? Okay, so so far so now they've dropped off their bag. They're on a flight, okay, a pseudo flight, right? Okay, so now they're on a flight. We're gonna stay in there for 60 minutes, okay, and then let's shorten this, right? Again, we're just kind of representing this. This isn't supposed to be like a real thing, so let's do 10, and then let's put the capacity at I don't know, let's do like 100 or 200, okay. And then you do, because you don't want like a bunch of passengers waiting here. Let's just assume they're just getting on their own flight. When you get to the baggage claim, this is where I have to now search inside this station and then retrieve my own bags, right? If I'm a passenger, I dropped off bags here. When I get to the baggage claim, I gotta retrieve my own bags and make sure it's the correct ones. And I'm gonna retrieve those and then leave, right? Okay. So let's focus on that logic there. Okay. So at the baggage claim, okay, I need to search for my bags, right? Okay, so I can do an add-on process when something enters a patient input, right? I'm sorry, parent input, right? So that's the parent and member nodes, right? So I can go on the baggage claim combiner. So this is a combiner. Okay. Let's do add-on process. Okay. So when a parent enters, okay, you know what? I can do this at multiple places. Let's do it at, maybe I want to do it at the input node. Okay. So when something, you know what? It's really it's really a choice. Yeah, let's do parent enter. Okay, everything's here. It's logical order, so let's just do parent enter. When parent enters, I want Simio to now go and search in that station queue and find my own bags. Okay, based on the bag ID, and then retrieve those. Okay, so now that we have, sorry, my Simio is acting a little bit slow right now. There we go. So now that we have the parent entered, we're going to search. This is now we're going to search the station queue for our bags and then retrieve the one that matches the bag ID, the passenger and the bags. Okay, so let's go to parent enter. The first thing I'm going to do is do a search. Let's do a search. And I'm not going to search the entire population here. I'm going to search the queue state. Okay, so the queue state will be bag storage contents, right? So that's referring to what's in here, okay? Whatever's in there, all right? Now look in there, okay? Search, it's gonna be either, so you can actually search for expressions here. We don't really, we're gonna search for expression, but you can do like minimization and maximization. You can read some of the descriptions here if you want to. Our search is more simple. We just have to find the one with the matching ID. So I'm gonna leave it as just a forward search. And then the match condition here is model entity dot bag ID. So that's the model entity that goes in to the parent node and triggers this process. So it's their passenger. That has to equal, okay, candidate dot model entity dot model entity dot bag ID. So this keyword candidate has to be there. So this is referring to all of the model entities that are in that bag storage queue. Okay. They're candidates because each model entity could be a candidate, right? They are a potential match, right? Okay, so candidate dot model entity dot bag ID. Okay, the limit here, I'm going to change this to, you can set up a variable. I'm just going to change it to 3 because I know at most people check in 3 bags. Okay, so I'm going to search for if you have a match, then it's going to be found. Okay, once it's found, I want to transfer those matching bags into this transfer node 1. Okay, so I'm going to do a transfer matching bags from, not from free space, but from current station to transfer node 1. Okay, and then we should kind of see them showing up here, and then like conveyor wise, they'll kind of come out, right? So we probably also want to add another process here to during transfer there. This is kind of extra, but I think it's good to have. Let's do an end transfer, and then the process here will be transfer node 1 entered, right? Okay, so when a bag enters this transfer node, it's gonna, end transfer, and you'll see it show up here. It's kind of an extra step, but I like to just be complete. Okay, so let's go back to our search right here. Okay, search. If it's found, then you do it. And you transfer from the station to that transfer node, which goes into our combiner. Okay. You might also figure, okay, for now, I think in our case, we'll always find a matching bag, okay, because everyone has a bag. But in our case, in many other cases, maybe you want to set up like a safety case. Okay, so for example, I might want to do for now, just put a sync here. Maybe I route those passengers that can't find their bags into a separate area. Okay, so I'll just kind of put this as a kind of a placeholder right now. So transfer node 2 and then sync 2. Let's change the logical length here. This is probably not going to come into play right now, but I mean, if you kind of understand why I'm putting this, great. This is kind of a fail-safe, right? What if you don't find anything, right? But they do have bags, then what do you do with them, right? Okay, so let's add this side step here. Okay, and this is where it's good to kind of introduce the token dot value, return value. If it goes to 1, what that means is that they found something. The search resulted into something. If it's false, then this will be to 0. Okay. So if you found something, nothing happened. If it's false, then you want to do something, right? Like the passenger has to go find it in their lost baggage area, right? For now, I'm just going to transfer them from the current station to, let's transfer into transfer node 2. Okay, so I'm just going to transfer those people here. It's not going to come into play here because everybody has a bag to check in, right? But just in case, maybe I could set up a condition where some people have 0 bags checked in. So those people would then be transferred from here to transfer node 2, right? Okay, I gotta make sure, this runs correctly. Now again, the only thing I have to kind of test out, make sure this current station is selected correctly. We might have changed the free space. I don't think so at this point. We'll have to test it out. Okay, let's finish this logic here. So I think we're done with this. Okay, so we have to set up the combiner now. Okay, so here at the combiner, if you look at what I did here, is there's a batch quantity. So model entities, remember it's the passenger that comes in here, right? That's going to trigger everything. Okay, they have a certain number of bags, right? So you want to kind of make sure they wait for their total number of bags for their batch together and they leave the system. So the batch quantity is modeled to the number of bags, right? We created this earlier, okay? Matching rule, right? You want to make sure all of the bags, so when the bags appear, they're going to go in here, and then they're going to end up here, and they're going to be sitting in this input node or the input queue to this combiner, right? They're the member node, right? Member input node, right? Okay, so you want to make sure those bag IDs are matching. So model that bag ID, they'll have to match each other. And then the parent expression, what this means is Simio looks at this expression and checks the expression on also on the members as well. Okay, so these bag IDs were only generated earlier because we copied the entity, some of the attributes. So we know these bag IDs have to match. Okay, then they'll combine and they'll leave. Okay, so let's see if this runs. Okay, let's kind of run it one by one and see if it runs correctly. Simio running, it's a little bit laggy. So right here it is. My first passenger picked up the bag. Second passenger, they checked in 2 bags. Let's see, there's 2 bags right there. They're right on top of each other, so it's probably hard to see. Okay. Same with the third passenger. Okay, so it looks like it's working. I can pause it. Let's run it. I can pause it here, and then let's see. I can do a watch window. Okay, you can take a look here. Bag ID 4, number of bags 2, and then let's look at bag 37. Bag ID right here. 4, number of bags 2. So it looks like it's working. Okay, I can actually change this to make sure this is working correctly even more. Let's keep running. Okay, so I'm going to change this a little bit to make sure it looks like it's working. It should work. Okay, but let's change more things here. Right now, each passenger, so right now the arrival is 15 minutes. I'm going to change this to 5 minutes, so more passengers are arriving at once. And then the flight here, everyone has a processing time of 10 minutes. Let me change this to a random value here. So I'm going to do random. Let's do triangular. Minimum, let's say 5 minutes. Mode 7 minutes, and then 10 minutes. Oops, I'm sorry. Let's do like I saw like a symmetric triangle, right? 5, 7.5, 10. Okay. So now what we should see is even if you see a passenger arriving first, they might not necessarily be the first one to go there. So let's even change this to smaller. Let's change this to a random number 2. Random dot and triangular. Let's change this to min 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we should see many more passengers and bags arriving, and we can kind of pause it and see, make sure there's a match. Okay, things are happening correctly. So we see a lot more things piling up quicker. Let's pause it right there. All right, so let's look at this entity. Let's get the watch window. Okay, this passenger is bag ID 1. has 2 bags, right? Okay, let's see. These 2 bags, 29. This is, yeah, bag ID 1, right? Let's look at this station queue. Let's see what's inside this one. Just, yeah, get that directly. I can actually just look at the model. You see this bags storage station queue. Contents, there's 5 bags in there. So this is this bag ID 2, second passenger. Second passenger, their second bag. This is the see bag ID. Third passenger has 2 bags. Fourth passenger has 1 bag. Okay, and let's see, this looks like it's matching up. Let me just make sure this passenger again. This was bag ID, the first passenger, right? Okay. So let's keep running it, and then we should see a situation where we might have a situation where some of these passengers might have to wait, right? Okay, so right now there's 2 passengers waiting, right? Okay, let's take a look at this combiner. Okay, so this combiner, baggage count combiner, the parent input buffer. See, there's contents. There's 2 passengers, 33 and 36. The bag ID of 3, so passenger number 3, and then passenger number 4, passenger 3 and 4, right? Okay, passenger 4 has no 1 bag, and passenger 3 has 2 bags, right? So when we now check at path 5, let's get inside path 5, we should find the corresponding bags to those, right? So look at passenger 5. Let's look at the contents. There's 3 bags as expected, right? This first one, 34, is for the third passenger. They have 2 bags, so my guess is 35 is also for the same passenger expected, and this one will be passenger 4, I believe. Yep, and that one. So it's working, right? So it's working and it's returning the same bag, and people are picking up their right bags. One other thing I want to make sure I check is if it happens to go to this branch, this transfer happens correctly. And the way I can do that is this number of bags here. I've added this, there's no case that people have 0, right? So let me have a 0 case. I'll put a small, I don't know, 20% probability. Okay. Let me update the other ones. I do want it to add up to 1. So yeah, it's fine, right? Because it's cumulative, right? So 0. Okay, so now that's fine. Now when I have a person with no bags, they should appear here. Okay. Let's see. Or it might, let's see what happens here. See the case where there is no bags. Okay, let's pause it there real quick. Let's kind of look at some of these passengers. Okay, flight. Let's look at the contents. Processing. Contents, there's 2 passengers. This passenger has 2 bags. 59 has 1 bag. Okay, so we still don't have one without any bags, so hopefully we'll get one soon. Let's see if the logic is correct here. When we created those number of bags, inside bag ID, number of bags. So create, transfer. Okay, so let's keep running this, and then hopefully we'll get what we want. Checking the logic here. I wanted to make sure if you don't have, so I just added the condition or added the probability of the number of bags. There are passengers now with 0 bags, okay? And when I run the model, it looks like it's not getting routed correctly. So let's figure out what's going on. And this is kind of a good lesson to kind of debug and checking your logic on a lot of these things. So it says baggage claim entered. I'm doing a search. And this side is a total value 1. I want to set node. Actually, I think let's try transfer. I think that's what I had originally. Transfer from free space to transfer node 2. And I can kind of do this quickly and see. I can fast forward it actually, right? And I can go to result and see if anything enters sync 2. Nothing entered, right? It's just sync 1. Okay. So obviously then something's happening here, right? Nothing's going into sync 2. So there's a problem with this logic. If you on a second look here, trying to do a transfer off of this doesn't make sense, right? Because a model entity actually doesn't really trigger this whole thing, right? The token here is owned by the search, not the model entity, right? So this whole logic doesn't work, right? So I actually don't need this at all, okay? So kind of think about how we're gonna do this, okay? If you don't have any bags, what you actually wanna do is you wanna route those passengers from this point to transfer node 2, and everyone with the bag, you want to route them from here to the parent input node at baggage claim. Okay, so we've got to set up an add-on process here instead. Okay, and that'll bypass this issue altogether, right? So I'm going to do enter, and I'm going to do decide, and the condition I'm going to check is model entity dot num bags, I think, bags. If that's greater than 0, okay, then I want to route my entities to the parent input node. Otherwise, I'm going to send a transfer node 2, right? Okay, so let's do that now. Set node. If it's true, then I'm going to send them to parent input at baggage claim. If it's false, I'm going to set node 2, transfer node 2. Let's see if that logic now fixes our issue. Let's press run. I'm going to fast forward in a sec here to make sure it's done correctly. Okay, and you can kind of see there are stuff going to sync 2 now. Definitely, I'm sorry, the results. Fast forward. And now there are things going into sync 2. Very few, right? Just 10%, but it's happening now, right? Okay, so actually, I think it's 20%, whatever it is. Now we have some entities going in, yeah, 20% going into the sync. Okay, so I think this is it. We have a model, and we kind of summarize what happened here. What this model does, I'm now using a station queue to store the bag entities in here. When a passenger comes in, you generate a random number of bags, and those bags are tied in with the passenger using the bag ID. Okay, and that's the whole add-on process I set up here. Setting the ID value and then setting the number of bags, creating a copy associated object so that everything has the same number of bags and bag ID value, and transferring them into the station object here. They stay in there until the passenger goes through the flight and comes to the baggage claim. Then it'll retrieve the matching bag IDs, bring them to transfer node 2. It'll come out. They'll be batched together, and so it's like the passenger carrying the bags now and into the scene. Okay, so this is one way to kind of use it. So this shows you how to use a station object. This also shows you how to match things up using ID. There are many ways to do it. This is one way that you can do it. So hopefully this helps. This is a pretty common issue that you run into when you're trying to build a simulation model. So hopefully this video helps you overcome those issues. Okay. So thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.